Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast with Dan Casper.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to this episode of the Man Cave Podcast, brought to you by our good friends from Hy-Vee and Toyson Ford. On this episode of the podcast, we're going to talk straight up football. Packers, Jaguars. Packers heading down to Florida to take on the 2-5 Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars spending the last couple weeks across the pond, coming off of a win against the Patriots this past week. The previous week, they fell to the Chicago Bears. Jaguars, one of the more disappointing teams so far this season. I think, disappointing in the face of, I think we all thought they'd be a little bit better, but they got players. I mean, when you look at their roster, they got players. We know Trevor Lawrence is over there. We know about Travis Etienne. Take Bigsby's having a good season, especially in his last couple weeks. Rookie receiver Brian Thomas Jr. is having a solid rookie year. Gabe Davis is over there from Buffalo. Evan Ingram. Their offensive line. You remember Brandon Sheriff's over there. You've got Ezra Cleveland, Cam Robinson and such. Defensively, Eric Armstead's over there. Trayvon Walker, the former number 1 overall pick. I think you could say that maybe they got that one wrong, bypassed on Aiden Hutchinson over there. But, so I think a lot of people are like, especially a couple years ago when they make the postseason, it was like, okay, the arrow's trending upward. But for whatever reason, it ain't just working out so far for Jacksonville. And I think it's fair to say that Doug Peterson, coaching staff, maybe a little bit on the hot seat. We'll see how the rest of the season kind of transpires for them, but I think it's fair to say that job security over there might be a little bit up in the air for Doug Peterson and his Jaguars coaching staff. So, where do the Jaguars rank in terms of the rest of the teams in the NFL? Let's break it down here a little bit, okay? Let's start off with the offense. They shelled out a lot of money to their quarterback, Trevor Lawrence. And when you look at yards per game, and we threw out some names, right? Brian Thomas Jr., Gabe Davis, Christian Kirk's over there. Evan Ingram, I know, has been a little bit banged up, but takes Bigsby and Travis Etienne. All those guys on the offensive side. But when you look at where they rank in terms of yards per game offensively, they're about middle of the pack in the NFL. They're about in the middle. You've got the Colts that are just above them, averaging 329.3 points per game. Jacksonville's 325.9. Minnesota, right behind them, 325. Now, Green Bay is a team that's just outside the top 5. They're averaging 383, a little over 383 yards per game on the offensive side. If we break it down in terms of the passing game here, Green Bay 2, 4, 6, 8. So they're in the top 10 in terms of passing yards per game. Again, passing yards are a little bit down this year. Green Bay's in the top 10. They're, averaging 228 in the air. Again, Jacksonville's a little bit of middle of the pack, maybe just outside of the middle of the pack. So they're only averaging 201 yards per game through the air. Rushing is where they have been able to have some success in moving the ball. Now, again, Green Bay is a top 5 team in terms of running the ball, 155 yards on the ground. And Jacksonville's just outside the top 10, 124.3 yards per game on the ground. So that's kind of where Jacksonville's offense, again, I think when you look at who they have on their roster and the type of talent that they have on their roster, it's probably a little bit of a head-scratcher for some. Like, why aren't they able to do a little bit more? You got an offensive-minded head coach over there, and a little bit left to be desired at this point. Now, defensively, when we look at what the Jaguars are defensively, they're not great. They're not great. They're a bottom 5 team in terms of giving up yards per game. They are giving up 376.4 yards per game. Compare it to Green Bay, who right now is about middle of the pack, 318. San Francisco's just slightly, so Green Bay's 318.4, San Francisco 318. If you break it down by passing yards per game, defensively, how many yards through the air are they giving up? Jacksonville, second worst. The second worst team in the NFL in terms of passing yards, giving up passing yards. The only team that's worse than them, though, is Baltimore. So Jacksonville's giving up 273.9 yards through the air. Baltimore dead last at 287.1. Green Bay, as we mentioned, middle of the pack, 203.9. That's what they're allowing through the air. When we look at rushing yards per game, this is where Jacksonville's defense has had success. They are a top 10 team in rushing defense, only allowing 102.6 yards on the ground. In a complete flip, it's similar to Baltimore, but Baltimore is a top team in rushing defense. Last in passing, top in rushing. Again, Green Bay, middle of the pack right now. Green Bay, and just a little bit of a side note, Green Bay and San Francisco are like right next to each other in all these defensive categories. It's kind of interesting there. But, it's about points per game when it comes to the defensive side, right? In Green Bay, 2, 4, 6, 8. So they're 10th, it looks like. Every team in the NFC North, top 10, is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, every team in the NFC North, top 10 in points allowed per defense. That's impressive. Green Bay is at 10. Jacksonville, third worst. So they're having success slowing the run down, not having success slowing teams through the air and keeping them off the scoreboard. Third worst, 27.7, just to compare it to Green Bay, 20.4. So that's kind of where the team's at right now in terms of rankings and where they stack up compared to other teams at this point. And if you go, and like I was earlier this morning kind of looking at some of the numbers and such, and a lot of these players last week, hey, they had good numbers according, if we use Pro Football Focus as a barometer or as like a scale sort of thing, they have good numbers, but to me, you gotta kind of grade it on a curve because you're going up against the absolute crappy New England Patriots. So I don't, like for example, Ventrell Miller, their linebacker. He had the 4th highest run defensive grade in Week 7. And we know Jacksonville's good at stopping the run, but again, look at who they play. We'll say Trevor Lawrence, if you want a little bit of a nuggets, he is the highest graded quarterback, according to Pro Football Focus, highest graded quarterback on deep throws this season, just slightly edging out Joe Burrow. So Trevor Lawrence is grading out at a 92.6, Joe Burrow 92.5. And I think a lot of that has to do with you got a rookie wide receiver in Brian Thomas, where amongst rookie wide receivers this year, he is second in receptions, first in yards after the catch, first in yards per route ran, tied for first with touchdown catches. So with all that being said, what are some keys to victory, key matchups? Players to watch, players that have to have themselves a game. I want to start with the Packers defense. So we went through a couple of those numbers there. One, know where Brian Thomas Jr. is. Obviously, he's having a good rookie season. We just went through those. He's playing some good ball right now. Okay? And we just went through Trevor Lawrence, how good he is at the deep ball. Whether that means Jair is spending the majority part of his time on Brian Thomas Jr., or what. But, Green Bay's coming off of a heck of a performance in the defensive game. Specifically in the pass defense. I know Mixon ran for over 100 yards with the Texans this past week, but to hold C.J. Stroud and that crew for under 100 yards, yes, they were missing Nico Collins, but still to hold C.J. Stroud and, you still got Stephon Diggs and such to under 100 yards is pretty dang impressive. So Green Bay's secondary, I think, again, will be a little tested with some deep throws and with Brian Thomas Jr. Jaguars want to get the ball out to Brian Thomas Jr. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that you can forget about the rushing offense from Jacksonville. Tank Bigsby, 415 yards on the ground so far this year. He's averaging 6.2 yards per carry. 4 touchdowns. Then you got Travis Etienne, also involved in there, 230 yards rushing. So you've got 2 running backs that have the ability to put up some numbers and the ability to run the ball and move the ball. And especially Tank Bigsby right now with where he's at. And, I think at least for the last couple of years, when you think about running backs with the Jaguars, it's Travis Etienne and that. But right now you look at Bigsby. He's coming off of 118 yards against the Patriots. Yes, just 24 yards and 7 carries against the Bears. Colts, he had 101 on 13 carries, 90 against Houston. But it's kind of a two-headed, right? It's kind of a two-headed punch with these running backs. And that's where Trevor Lawrence, when you look at some of his play action numbers, that's where he has success because of those 2 guys. You've got to be aware of Tank Bigsby and Travis Etienne. But then the way Brian Thomas is playing, you got some other options in the receiving core for the Jaguars. You've got to be aware of his play action rate. Because Trevor Lawrence, not bad. Pretty darn solid against play action this year. So defensively, is it a similar type of a game plan as last week? I think for one, you got to try to get pressure on Trevor Lawrence. I don't think you can play him the same way you kind of did with, just like a discipline pressure and such. Kind of want to see a lot of the similar stuff to what we saw against the Texans. That's getting after C.J. Stroud. He was great against the blitz, but winning getting there with like 4 or 5 guys and not necessarily bring in extra blitzes all the time. Jeff Hafley yesterday, by the way, he talked about the blitzing or the pressure that they were able to get against the Houston Texans. And if you haven't ever listened to Jeff Hafley talk, I mean, that guy was I could listen to that guy talk football a lot. But he broke it down a little bit in terms of how they were able to generate pressure with 4 and then bringing a unique or a different type of player as a 5th option. We saw that in that game, right? We saw like Eric Wilson. We saw Xavier McKinney getting a sack over there too. So is he able to confuse a guy like Trevor Lawrence in this game and able to get that pressure and able to get after him and maybe make some mistakes or rush that throw? But I think they got to be disciplined. They got to be aware of their 2 running backs coming out of the backfield. Be aware of the running game with those 2. But they're going to have a solid secondary game. Jair's going to, I would imagine, be on Brian Thomas Jr. quite a bit. But don't forget about the other options over there. And then Packers offensively, when you look at it, it's been a few times this year where we've gone into games and thinking, okay, you're going up against a porous run defense. Run the football. It's a day to run the football. But this week, you look at where they're at, and Jacksonville's, the one thing they do well on defense is what? They do a pretty solid job of stopping the run. Through the air, they've struggled here a little bit. So when you look at that, that would kind of tell a lot of people, all right, we got to throw the football. We're going to throw the football. I get it. That doesn't mean you can completely abandon the run. And I don't think Green Bay wants to completely abandon that run. I don't think they want to go into this game saying, all right, we're going up against a team that's had some success stopping the run. Jacob, sorry, man, but probably not going to get a lot of carries. They want to establish the run. They want to have success running the football. But this might be an opportunity for this Green Bay receiving core and tight ends to have themselves a day. And for Jordan Love to have themselves a day. I think ultimately if Green Bay offensively is able to get a little bit going there with the running game to where that play action is super effective, they can attack that Jaguars defense through the air. If they can have some success running the football with Jacobs, Wilson, whoever, if they can do that, that just opens up that play action game, and that's where I think you could potentially see some big plays when it comes to this Packers offense, passing offense. Now, I think they're going to be able to move the ball through the air. But if Jacksonville's going to be able to have success in slowing down the run, stopping the run without, loading up the box, they can dedicate extra defenders out there and such. But I think a key here is even though Jacksonville has done a decent job of slowing down that run, if you can get that running game going, against them, it opens up that play action game. And then you can really be aggressive down the field and taking some shots or moving the ball through the air. Right now, this secondary from Jacksonville, 1 interception. That's it. They have 1 interception. They've forced 3 fumbles and only recovered 2 of them. They're not that great at taking the ball away. Takeaways this year. They haven't been opportunistic in that department. I know we opened up the week and the talk was a little bit, at least on the socials, and we threw it out there too, was, okay, don't overlook Jacksonville. We know you got Detroit coming up afterwards. Then it's the bye, and then, got this run of Chicago, San Francisco, Miami, Detroit, Seattle. Green Bay, by all accounts, this is a game Green Bay wins on every single level. Green Bay is a team that's 5-2, coming off of a win against Houston, in which they tried every single way to give that thing away, lost the turnover battle by 3, still won it. Green Bay is a more talented team. They're a team that's playing with more confidence in every single area. This is a game that Green Bay should win, and maybe even win comfortably. The only thing for me in this game where Green Bay doesn't win is they shoot themselves in the foot and Jacksonville capitalizes on it. They shoot themselves in the foot by turning the ball over, or they come out flat because for whatever reason, or they're looking past them, and then Jacksonville takes advantage of that. But if Green Bay plays their game offensively and defensively, they win this game. They go into Jacksonville and they win this game. I think there's going to be opportunities for this passing offense to move the ball down the field. Maybe it's a day for Christian Watson. Maybe it's Dontayvion Wicks, Jaden Reed, Tucker Kraft. Who cares? They got options. They got options up the wahoo for their passing offense. The only way I see Green Bay not winning this game is if they don't allow themselves to win it. If they come out flat, or they overlook them, or they make stupid mistakes and turn the ball over, and Jacksonville's able to capitalize on it. Play your game, focus on the opponent at hand, and play your game. You're going to win this ball game. So I think a key, so some keys to victory here, other keys to victory for me for Green Bay. Again, even though Jacksonville has done a good job of slowing down the run, try to establish that, get that play action game going. Because if you could get that play action game going, I think big plays are going to be on the table there. So I still think you have to try to establish the run. Don't give Jacksonville any extra possessions or any sort of confidence by turning the ball over. Make good throws, make good decisions, Jordan Love. Not in a triple coverage. That sort of thing. This is a team that hasn't been able to take the ball away this year. Don't allow them to, or don't let them all of a sudden have a career day in terms of interceptions and such. Take care of the football. Take care of that football. Play your style of offense. I feel like if Green Bay plays their style of offense, they hold the upper hand by a wide margin against this Jacksonville defense. Then on the flip side, I think you play a lot of the similar stuff, not necessarily the same exact game plan. You don't want to do that. But for the Packers defense, I think you take some elements of what you did last week against the Texans and do it this week. Try to get after Trevor Lawrence. Don't allow him, where he's had success, has been those deep balls. Don't allow him to have time in the pocket behind the line of scrimmage for some big plays to hit those deep throws to Brian Thomas Jr. Put some consistent pressure on him, about that 50% mark like it was against the Texans. Go out there and do that. But be mindful. Don't ignore the young running back duo of Tank and Travis. Because similar to Green Bay, if Jacksonville's going to have success in running the football, and they're going to be able to get 4-5 yards per carry, Trevor Lawrence is pretty good at play action. He's had good numbers with play action. Don't allow them to get into that groove. So stop the run. Stop the run. Put constant pressure on Trevor Lawrence. And don't let Brian Thomas Jr. go off. Shut him down. Take him out of the game. Force Lawrence to go elsewhere with the football. You got Christian Kirk, who's got 320 receiving yards so far this year, 1 touchdown. Gabe Davis is on there too. He's played a lot of football throughout his career. But if they could take Brian Thomas Jr. out of it, you're kind of, blanking half the field there. So constant pressure on Lawrence. Try to get him to make some mistakes out there. Slow down that run. Don't let Jacksonville get into a play-action game. So I think for my players to watch, players that got to have a game, offensively and defensively. Offensively, I'm going to go Christian Watson. I don't know why. I've got this feeling. It's just based off of a gut feeling. This might be a game where Christian Watson just has one of those games. Over 100 yards receiving, maybe a touchdown or 2. But we talked about if Green Bay could get into the play action where they do have success running the football against a defense that has had success at slowing down the football or running the football. If Green Bay is able to have that, they could get that play action. Boom, that opens it up for Watson down the field. So I'm looking at Christian Watson. That's my guy that's got to have a game. My guy who's going to have a game on Sunday. Offensively. Defensively. I want to... The big thing here is we don't know if Quay Walker's going to play or not. So I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to say the linebacking group as a whole. Whether that's Quay Walker, or it's Eric Wilson, or Edrin Cooper, or McDuffie. I'm going to go with those guys because those are the guys that have to slow down, take out Tank Bigsby and Travis Etienne. Don't let them be factors in this game. It's those linebackers. Maybe even throw a little Javon Bullard in there too because he's playing closer to the line of scrimmage. But I'm looking at the linebackers that have to be guys that step up and slow down that running attack. And maybe even bring in a little pressure against Trevor Lawrence. So I know it's not one player. I'm kind of going against my own rules, but I'm going to go with the linebacking group. However, that whole rotation kind of shapes up for Green Bay. With all that being said, my prediction for Packers versus Jaguars, I'm going to go Packers 34, Jaguars 13. Maybe I'm a little overconfident in this one, which doesn't make me feel the greatest, but I just, this is a game Green Bay should comfortably win. Now, I shouldn't say the word should when it comes to the world of sports, but I'm feeling confident about this game. I'm feeling comfortable about this game, which should probably make me nervous here a little bit. But that's my prediction, and I'm going to stick to it. So that's going to do it for this quick episode of the Man Cave Podcast. Again, brought to you by our good friends from Hy-Vee and Toyson Ford. Don't forget to check out the Resonance Branding Company Swag Cave. That link is in the podcast description. And if you got a few seconds, don't forget to follow and subscribe to the Man Cave Podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. Until next time, Dan Casper, and I'll talk to you on the next episode of the Man Cave Podcast.